There is a television tower in Washington, D.C. that keeps time to a few billionths of a second. Not the time on your phone. Time on the atomic scale. 1 billionth. The time light needs to cross a foot of air. Television does not need that. The tower has it anyway. Because in 2016, the clock this country runs on, the one in orbit, told the planet the wrong time. For hours. This tower is being trained for the day that happens again and does not stop. Start with a small correction. GPS is not really a map. It is a clock. 30-some satellites, each carrying atomic clocks, each doing one thing forever, announcing the time. Your phone finds itself by comparing those announcements. Position is just arithmetic done on time. The ground learned to listen too. Your last phone call rode a network that holds itself together by microsecond turns, about 1.5 millionths of a second under federal guidance. The power grid monitors itself with sensors aligned to 1 millionth. And when a share of stock changes hands, the rule is written down. The clocks recording the trade must stay within 50 milliseconds of the atomic clock at NIST. Grid, phones, markets. Different industries, one habit. Nearly all of them, one way or another, set their watch by a whisper from space. You have never set any of these clocks. They set themselves. And you already know that voice has gone wrong. What you have not heard is how often or how easily. January 26th, 2016. The Air Force retires the oldest satellite in the GPS fleet. Routine. But a software issue during the removal loads a bad number, and for hours, 15 satellites broadcast a time that is off by about 13 millionths of a second. 13 microseconds. You would never notice. Radio networks noticed. In Britain, digital stations fell into dead air while engineers hunted for a fault inside their own equipment. The fault was overhead. The clock had stumbled once, and the stumble reached the ground in minutes. Jamming is easier. In 2012, a pickup truck kept passing Newark Airport with a jammer on board, the kind sold openly online. The driver was not attacking anyone. He just did not want his employer tracking him. His jammer also degraded a precision landing system in testing beside the runway. The FCC moved to fine him nearly $32,000. 3 years later, it settled for $2,360 in installments. In January 2022, GPS turned unreliable around Denver for 33 hours. 86 aircraft. One landing was abandoned partway down. Officials say it was unintentional. The source was found and switched off. What it was, the public record never quite says. 9 months later, it happened around Dallas-Fort Worth. For about 2 days by the government's count, closer to 1 by researchers. 256 aircraft, a runway closed. That time, the source was never found. That sentence still sits in the record. And in Europe, officials stopped calling it an accident. Through 2024, jamming around the Baltic grew until Finnair, after 2 flights had to turn around mid-approach, suspended its route to the Estonian city of Tartu for a month. The airport's approach depended on satellite navigation. Estonia blamed Russia. By the end of that summer, one pilot's group was counting roughly 1,500 flights a day being spoofed, up from about 300 at the start of the year. Crews reported something stranger than lost position. Cockpit clocks thrown forward by years. Encrypted radio links dropping because plane and ground no longer agreed on the day. Every one of those stories is about position, the part of GPS with famous backups, radar, radios, beacons. The other thing those satellites carry, the time, has no famous backup at all. Washington had been asking about it quietly for years. The answer was standing in plain sight. In February 2020, the White House signed an executive order about positioning, navigation, and timing. In the flat language of government, it says disruption poses a threat to national and economic security. Translation: we depend on this, and we know it can be taken away. Agencies started testing alternatives, and in March 2025, the FCC opened a formal proceeding asking what else could do part of GPS's job. The filings list the candidates: new satellites, lower and louder, fiber networks, long-wave radio, and one candidate that reads like a typo in a national security document: television. The requirements explain it. A backup clock for a country has to be powerful, hard to jam, able to reach indoors, and ideally already built, already powered, already staffed. Nobody wants to fund a new national network from zero, which is exactly the moment someone points out the window at a structure every American has stopped seeing. There are, by the industry's own count, about 1,500 broadcast television towers in the United States. You know them by their red lights. They have been declared obsolete every year since streaming began. The hardware of a medium everyone says is dying. Quietly, that medium rebuilt itself. The standard is called ATSC 3.0, marketed as Next-Gen TV, a data broadcast closer to a one-way internet than to rabbit ears television, and by the industry's count, its signals already reach more than 3/4 of the country. The physics is why the timing people looked twice. A GPS satellite whispers from 20,000 kilometers away. By the time its signal reaches your street, it is astonishingly faint, which is why a truck stop jammer can drown it. A TV transmitter shouts from across town. The Broadcasters Association claims up to 1,000 times more signal strength at the receiver. Whatever the exact number, these signals were engineered for one job: punching through walls into living rooms, caught by cheap antennas, no subscription, no handshake. When the tower people realized what the timing people needed, there was nothing to invent. Nexstar's chief technologist put it plainly: we realized we have this equipment. Because the plan is not to send you television, the plan is to hide a clock inside it. Every ATSC 3.0 broadcast travels in frames, and every frame opens with the same cord, the bootstrap, findable in any noise. The standard already carried something almost nobody was using: a timestamp, riding in each frame's preamble, naming the instant the leading edge of that bootstrap is supposed to leave the antenna, stamped on the atomic timescale. Supposed to. Nobody was checking. The Broadcast Positioning System, BPS, is what happens when someone starts checking. A rack of equipment sits beside the transmitter and listens to its own station off the air. It measures when each frame actually left, compares it against a reference clock, and trims the next frame. The trim loop typically holds the error under 1/billionth of a second. A side channel inside the broadcast carries the rest: the tower's surveyed coordinates and the pedigree of its clock. A receiver then does old math with new precision. It knows where the tower stands. It knows when the wave departed. Distance divided by the speed of light is delay. Subtract the delay, and what remains is the time, to nanoseconds, from a TV aerial. One catch, printed plainly: the receiver must know exactly where it stands, too. Its cables measured once, calibrated. This is a clock for places that do not move: substations, cell sites. Two details make engineers lean in. The time channel is armored. The television picture needs a strong, clean signal to decode, but the BPS data survives about 20 decibels weaker. On the fringe of reception, the picture dissolves. The clock keeps arriving. And towers can listen to each other, forming a mesh. Leaders holding traceable atomic time, neighbors setting themselves by the leaders. The design papers describe a catalogue of transmitters, like GPS's almanac, and reckon an antenna high on a tower could hear 70 stations if the whole system were built. None of this required changing the broadcast standard. The time was already in the signal's grammar. Nobody had given it a job.
The measurement lives in Colorado.
In 2024, BPS was switched on at KWGN, a Nexstar station on a mountain west of Denver. NIST, the keepers of the country's official second, pointed ordinary rooftop TV antennas at it. 3 listening posts. The station's studio, 14 miles out, clear line of sight. A NIST rooftop in Boulder, 19 miles, with a ridge of terrain in the way. And a third, 66 miles north, at WWVB, the radio station whose signal sets millions of American war clocks. The nation's clock setter, checking television's homework. The homework held. Over 50 days, the time coming through the air wandered by only tens of billionths of a second. In the earlier stability run, the deviation statistic stayed under 2 billionths, the territory of everyday GPS receivers. On the clean path to the studio, in separate sessions, it dipped below 1 billionth. And the largest wobble NIST could still see tracked the outdoor temperature. Warm air slows the signal by just enough to notice, though their model could not explain all of it. Further study, they wrote. The measurement is fine enough that the afternoon shows up in it. Then, one January morning during maintenance, the transmitter ran at lower power, and the obstructed Boulder receiver lost the signal for 10 hours. The far receiver at WWVB, on a clear path, never blinked. One tower is a demonstration. A mesh is a system. Colorado is the measurement. Washington is the architecture. WHUT, Howard University's station, became the first TV station in the nation to carry BPS, a leader tower backed by a cesium clock. In Baltimore, WNUV follows it, setting its time from WHUT's signal out of the air. If satellites go quiet over either city, the cesium clock carries them both. The asterisks are printed in the papers. The Denver rig kept its reference disciplined by GPS, a measuring convenience. Piping the national clock in by fiber is not yet built. And as of the 2025 deployment report, the whole network was 3 transmissions, 2 labs, and a cloud server. In 2025, the Department of Transportation put money on the table. $744,000 for a field trial with a partner chosen to make the point, Dominion Energy, a power company. The grid testing the spare clock. Since then, the schedule has tightened. In December 2025, the Broadcasters Association reorganized and gave BPS its own division. The group's longtime chief technologist moved over to run it full-time. A trade association restructured around a clock. By this June, deployment progress was the standing agenda item. The vision is easy to describe and expensive to build. Hundreds of transmitters, each with hardened time equipment. Leader stations holding time traceable to atomic standards even with the sky gone quiet. Receivers in substations, cell sites, trading floors, all listening to television for the time. What stands in the way is just as concrete. Receivers exist as test equipment, not as products. Stations must buy clock racks broadcasting never needed, and someone has to decide who pays. Engineers are still studying how their own signal could be spoofed and how to cryptographically sign the time so a fake tower cannot lie convincingly. None of this is finished. Nobody serious claims it is. The backup for the newest infrastructure is one of the oldest mass networks we have, a medium whose obituary has been written for 20 years. Television, of all things, asked to hold the nation's spare time. The chair of the government's own GPS advisory board put it in one sentence. The biggest threat with GPS right now is that it is being taken for granted.
So notice the tower.
You will pass one this week, on a ridge or behind a strip mall, red light blinking with a patience that has outlasted every prediction of its death. Count what exists tonight. A cesium clock in a university TV station in Washington. A follower tower in Baltimore, setting its time by its neighbor's signal. A test rig on a mountain west of Denver. 2 labs, a cloud server, and a plan. That is the entire spare clock of the United States so far. A backup is a bet, placed by careful people, that the day will come. For 70 years, television only ever asked you to watch. It has stopped asking.